So from Trump eyeing a no-show in Joburg, to Porsche's bittersweet results, to a young champion making the headlines and a past talent erased by history, today's show is all about missed chances, big rebounds, and the real stories behind the headlines. My friends, this is Daily Bagel, the morning news show keeping you informed and entertained with the most important news out there. Let's get into it. So kicking us off with current affairs, Donald Trump says that he might skip the G20 summit in Johannesburg this November, which is the first time that the world's biggest economies are meeting on African soil. Now his reasoning here is that he says South Africa has very bad policies, a nod to the long-standing tensions over land reform, BEE, and the country's cozy ties to the BRICS bloc. So the G20 matters because it's where all the leaders of these countries, representing over 85% of our global GDP, essentially hash out how to keep the world economy from falling apart. Now earlier this month, the finance ministers met in Durban, and for the first time in ages, all 20 countries agreed on a joint statement. Things like tackling debt relief, global tax rules, and fairer trade. Now for President Ramaphosa, hosting the summit is a chance to put Africa's priorities at the center of global decision-making. Things like jobs, infrastructure, tourism, and food security. Now look, if President Trump decides to stay home, he'll still likely send someone in his place. But it'll certainly cast a shadow over South Africa's big diplomatic moments, especially as Washington takes over the G20 presidency next year. And on to our quick fire mentions, domestic flights are burning holes in wallets. You see, with FlySafair's pilot strike slashing seat availability, last-minute return fares between Johannesburg and Cape Town have spiked to nearly 10 grand, pricier than some international trips. And best you go buy some lottery tickets because Parliament has officially and finally passed Budget 2025. Now this appropriation bill cleared the National Council of Provinces yesterday, ending weeks if not months of debate. It now just needs President Ramaphosa's signature before becoming law. And on to our finance section. Porsche is having a year of big wins and big headaches. You see, on the bright side, its Taycan has just been named Car and Driver's EV of the Year, and the brand capped off a stellar Formula E season by taking both the team's and manufacturer's world titles. Furthermore, nearly 60% of the best-selling Macan range is now electric, a sign that Porsche's long-term push into EVs and high-performance tech is finally paying off with customers. But now, in saying that, the good news is being overshadowed by a bruising trade war. You see, after the EU's new deal with the US, import tariffs on luxury cars are set to jump 15% from tomorrow, actually. Porsche estimates a €400 million hit in the first half of the year alone, slashing its profit outlook as operating income collapsed nearly 91% in the last quarter. So CEO Oliver Bloom says that the brand is not in a storm that will pass, with weak demand in China and a slower than expected EV transition piling on more pressure. Now, as a result, Porsche is now hiking prices, cutting costs, and accelerating major restructuring of its business, betting that today's pain will set up for a stronger, more profitable rebound from 2026 onwards. And next up, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, has just released its latest global outlook. And while most of the world got a small upgrade, South Africa's forecast hasn't moved, still stuck at 1% growth this year, creeping to 1.3% in 2026. And so globally, growth is pegged at 3%, thanks to cooler trade tensions and a weaker dollar. But South Africa didn't exactly make the guest list for that optimism. You see, the IMF still says that our old villains like Transnet's freight mess, unreliable power supply, and snail-paced reforms are still throttling our economy. So why should we care about this? Because the IMF isn't just throwing darts at a board. Its numbers influence how investors price our debt, where the foreign capital flows in, and even what interest rates that you pay down the line. And when our neighbors are projected to grow at a healthy 4% plus, we're stuck here watching from the slow lane. And on to our quick fire mentions, Chinese car brand Jetour is ramping up its South African push. After selling around 500 cars a month in its first year, they are now reportedly set to unveil two new SUVs, the T1 and off-road focused T2, this October. And to all of my property friends out there, Cape Town's inner city has just scored a tax break extension. You see, SARS will keep offering big tax incentives for developments in designated urban development zones until 2030, a move aimed at attracting private investments into underused city areas. And on to our sports section. Pieter Coetzé has officially arrived as South Africa's new swimming superstar. The 21-year-old stunned the field at the World Aquatics Championships in Singapore, outdueling two other Olympic champions to win gold in the men's 100-meter backstroke. Now his time, 51.85 seconds, set a new African record, but more interestingly, it was just 0.25 seconds off the world record. Now what makes this win so remarkable is how far Coetzé has come in a year. At the Paris Olympics, he left empty-handed despite breaking African records. Then at last year's World Champs, he famously clipped the lane rope in the final and slipped to 5th. This time around though, a calmer, more balanced Coetzé kept his composure when it mattered most. Cometh the man, cometh the moment. So now this is reportedly South Africa's first medal of these championships so far, but Coetzé isn't done just yet. You see, he still has the 50-meter and 200-meter backstroke to come, with the chance to add even more gold to what's already shaping up to be a career-defining week. And on to our quick fire mentions. Rassie Erasmus says that the Boks are largely injury-free ahead of the Rugby Championships, with Canan Moody's hand infection clearing up and Cheslin Colby recovering from a minor knee issue. Now, long-term casualties include Ulrich Lowe, Cameron Hanekom, and Frans Malherbe. And as we cast our attention to international cricket, England has lost captain Ben Stokes for the rest of the series against India due to a shoulder injury. Now, vice-captain Ollie Pope will lead the side, with Stokes' 17 wickets having been pivotal in the series so far. Now, before we continue, here is something to chew on. Which country buys the most South African exports? Is it A, China, B, Russia, or C, the United States? We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. And on to our wildcard section. In the 1890s, South African cricket had a problem. It couldn't find a strike bowler to trouble the touring English sides. Now the solution should have been obvious. William Henry Hendricks, nicknamed Kron, was this coloured fast bowler from Cape Town who terrified every English batsman whenever they faced him. I mean, in 1892, he tore through a visiting England side while playing for a combined Malay team at Newlands, leaving even the England captain calling him the fastest bowler in South Africa. Now, everyone knew that Hendricks should have been in the national side. The 1894 tour to England was looming and influential voices backed him for selection. But cricket back then wasn't just about talent. Reportedly, Cecil Rhodes and his allies blocked Hendricks because of his race, even suggesting that he could tag along as a baggage handler. Hendricks refused, writing to the Cape Times that he would not travel unless treated as a proper player. And so, as a result, he never got the call-up. Hendricks ended up playing in local leagues, building a cricketing legacy in Cape Town's coloured community. His story only resurfaced about a century later through research and biographies like Too Black to Wear White, a testament to the extraordinary talent that just never got to represent his country. And as for that bagel bite, the answer is China by a wide margin. According to the OEC, nearly 18% of South Africa's total exports in 2023 went there. China also tops the list of countries we import from the most, making it our biggest overall trading partner. And my friends, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you guys have a cracker Thursday, and be sure to tune in tomorrow for the final Daily Bagel show of the week. It is going to be a goodie. Have a great one, be kind to one another, and I'll catch you all same time tomorrow. Cheers.